Australian Aviation Podcast, the official podcast of Australian Aviation, unpacking the latest insights, developments and issues impacting Australia's aviation sector.
Hello everybody, my name is Adam Thorne and welcome to the Australian Aviation Podcast, the show where we talk a lot of nonsense and a little bit about aviation. I will start off by introducing my co-host Jake Nelson. Jake, how are you?
I'm fine, Adam. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Now, we usually start with shout-outs. We have quite a few shout-outs and announcements to make. The first one is an update on the Dread Enoch. Before I give you the update, for those people that aren't aware, the long-time listeners or viewers, what is the Dread Enoch?
Well, that's the question, isn't it, Adam? It's ostensibly a producer for this show, but nobody's ever gotten a clear look at it because the Dread Enoch lives in the vents.
Yeah.
And eats raw meat, I believe. Can be fended off, as I recall, with a holy symbol of the aviation gods.
Yeah.
Just a genuinely terrifying creature that has haunted the Australian Aviation Podcast for quite a while now. From, as I say, the vents.
Now, I got word that, the Dread Enoch is no more, that effectively people got together and the Dread Enoch has been flushed out of events and is, finally we are shot of him. Do you have any information on how the Dread Enoch met his maker?
Quite literally flushed out of the vents, Adam. There was a big hose.
Yeah.
There was put up into the vents and just water was pumped all through the vents.
Yeah.
Until it flooded the Dread Enoch's lair and drove him out into the open for an epic final battle involving swords and such like.
Yeah.
Incidentally, the lifts don't work now.
No. Is that water? Because you remember there was that. I thought it was a storm in Sydney on Monday. Could that water actually have been linked to the end of the Dread Enoch?
That's what we wanted the Dread Enoch to think, Adam. But we used the storm as cover to enact our plan to finally free ourselves of its mysterious and yet terrifying grip.
Have we seen like a carcass yet? Do we know he's actually gone? Or is it more of a spiritual feeling that we know he flushed him out?
Well, he did dissolve into shadows that oozed down the elevator shaft and then spiraled into dust. So,
I also heard like the sound of like a choir sort of singing and stuff, like a kind of a holy sound. I don't know if that was linked to his demise, maybe a Brave New World.
No, I think they were just they just had like a Gregorian chant playlist on upstairs for unrelated reasons.
Well, if you are somehow watching from the afterlife, the Dread Enoch, obviously we are glad to have you out the vents. You have been the scorn on this show, but you did actually do an awful lot of good in terms of producing this, making it, editing it, what have you. You're a huge part of this show and allowing Jake to talk just total nonsense. So if you are watching this from some kind of otherworldly place, thank you very much and better luck with the future. Right,
an awful lot of good and a good lot of awful.
Right, moving on. A couple of weeks ago, you were in Perth, weren't you? Seeing Grandma
Yes.
Nelson. Well, it was during that point that we, myself and Jordan the Great, organised a trip to the Hunter Valley Air Show. So we can invite you basically because you were away.
No, that's fine.
No. But anyway, I remember the lovely gift you got me last week. So in the newfound spirit of togetherness, I got you a gift as well.
Oh, I love gifts.
Yeah.
I did think that was a suspiciously large box.
Yeah. It's not. I've not wrapped it up, but there you go.
Oh, how lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, it's a Gloucester Gladiator Mark 1/Mark 2 by Hella.
Yeah.
It's hella good.
So, now that may be too complicated for you to assemble on the show, but I reckon you could probably use work time, to be honest, to assemble that, and then we can add that to our growing collection.
Absolutely, yes. I'll definitely see if I can go with the RAF version rather than the Finland version, because the Finland version looks rather unfortunate, given who Finland ended up allying with during that war.
Yeah, okay.
This is the box.
This is the box, yeah. There we go. Also,
for those who are listening on Spotify, I showed a box.
Yes, this is a feature, isn't it? We also bumped into somebody from a company called Amazing Hands Wooden Models. They're getting a free plug here, and they make handcrafted.
Did they make this amazing hand wooden model?
Maybe they did. But they make handcrafted models of aircraft, and I saw they're enormous. and I saw one of the Super Constellation. I decided that we were going to buy one and install it here. Now, it won't look very good when I first take it out of the box, but the plan is that I'm going to install this. You know, like I did with the Pokemon one?
Yes.
I'm going to make this like during the show. So this is great for the people watching on YouTube. It could go very wrong. This is a big project, though. It's a big one.
Okay, so you're going to be doing this all the entire time we're here today?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because I can multitask, so I can talk about my news.
Can you?
No, not really, no. I mean, I'm also going to make this, and God willing, by the end of the show, we will have a huge Super Constellation that will be taking pride of place among our many model aircraft.
Oh, you'll probably need to. You'll probably need a lot of tea by the time this is over.
Have we got any other shout-outs for you?
Yeah, we've had a couple of comments from commenters.
Yeah, it tend to be the people that do that, isn't it?
Yes. Who knew? At Copuous commented on last week's video, the Virgin Qatar thing is more complex and simpler than it said. There were some huge question marks over why an airline that kept servicing overseas routes during COVID and out of all the airlines most likely repatriated more people back into the country wasn't allowed to increase its flights. There was a few things used as reasons. One was there was a fear that the market couldn't bear the extra seats in and out, or Qantas didn't want them in the market. The other was the treatment of women on a flight, and a lot of people who should know better fully putting all the blame on the airline and none on the airport or Qatar, the country, not the airline. I will point out that the airline is owned by the government of Qatar. In any case, they continue, but for the government, I mean, we are coming off the backs of the bonds of mishandling, perceived or otherwise, but the extreme delays in launch, Qantas factor again plays a role, as it seemed odd a wet lease for them, quick lease for bonds a month, and Rex and Sydney slots. Virgin made a great play because the other key thing, those flights that are on sale, well, seeing that for many of those times there simply is no Y-class seats on some aircraft flights, while other flights there isn't a hope of a cheap seat. The market is still short on seats. I don't think an election is having much of a play, other than once there is an approval, you can bet there will be a lot of press highlighting the terrors of the deal, which will be wrong or misplaced. So that is from Copuous. And at Harrix Ave, at Harrix Ave, possibly Harrix AV, says, you could have a more epic video intro that goes well along with the audio of that female voice. I'm sure you could take a leaf out of a YouTube channel called Nat's What I Reckon to increase your viewership 10 times.
What's Nat's What I Reckon? Have you checked this out?
I think he does cooking videos.
To be fair,
yeah.
I'd rather watch a cooking video than this rubbish we talk about.
I mean, you're cooking up a Super Constellation right now.
Oh yeah, no, that was good. That was good. Well, I've got a box here to get rid of. I'm just gonna put that there. Anyway, we can't have dead air. We got any more shout outs, or should we steam onto the news?
I think we should probably steam onto the news, Adam.
Okay. Right. What news are we talking about first? Hopefully nothing I'm about to write about.
Well, last week we spoke about the Virgin Qatar deal, and of course one of the things that was believed to be playing into the deal, or that's going to have to be resolved, is the question of the leadership succession of Virgin CEO Jayne Hrdlicka, who announced last year that she was leaving the position and is still there. And this is not a knock on her; she's done a fantastic job by all metrics that we can tell. But there were rumors floating around for months, since I think last June or something like that, that there was going to be that there was a replacement CEO as a frontrunner, and that was the chief, I think, customer and digital officer, Paul Jones. And his nomination had been opposed by the TWU. You may be putting wings on.
Yeah,
upside
for those
down
of you, I've completely
there,
messed this up. Have I? No. Yeah, no, I have I? No, that's right. Obviously, if you're not watching this on YouTube, none of this will make any sense. Surely that's correct, isn't it? So then what am I doing?
Well, maybe if you flip that one over so the engines are facing the front.
Hang on a
Just
minute.
like flip the engines towards you there.
That?
No. Turn it around.
Right.
Yeah, that's it. Now turn it. No,
I didn't say you got it right. Maybe I'm not. Actually, maybe it's got. Oh no.
No, Adam. What you want to do is see how it is in your hand at the moment.
Yeah.
Rotate your hand 180 degrees.
Yeah. That.
And now you can attach it to the plane.
Oh yeah, you're right.
There you go.
I'm an idiot.
I'm not as stupid as I look. Anyway, Paul Jones. So Paul Jones was in contention, so it was rumoured, for the role of CEO of Virgin Australia. But his nomination was, or his potential ascension to the throne in the in the Game of Planes, because Plane of Thrones doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
His ascension in the Game of Planes was opposed by a few corners such as the TWU. And there was also an intervention from Murray Watt, the employment minister. Both of them were saying that Virgin should be careful in terms of industrial relations perspective, because Paul Jones was at Qantas at the time of the illegal outsourcing of 1,700 ground workers in a contract that was taken over by Swissport. And so they were saying that someone who was involved in such an event would not be trusted by the workers and should not take over the top job. Well, last Friday at 5:30 p.m.
Classic
in a classic move of PR villainy, Virgin Australia announced that Paul Jones would not be the next CEO. He was out of the running. And he and the search for the next CEO was continuing. Now, as we understand it, Jayne Hrdlicka, it was reported in the AFR today that Jayne Hrdlicka is still planning to step down. So Bain Capital, owners of Virgin and the Virgin board, still looking for a replacement CEO, but whoever it is, it will not be Paul Jones.
I feel a little bit sorry. It's a bit of a public thing, isn't it? To just have to declare you're not going to, publicly declare you're not going to do. I mean, I've publicly declared you will never be the next editor of Australian Aviation before. Maybe I should send out a news alert on Friday. This is to confirm that Jake Nelson will not.
After significant pushback from the TWU and from the employment minister, I will not be the next editor of Australian Aviation.
But this again, you say it follows a lot of pressure by the TWU and the employment minister because of his involvement or apparent involvement in the outsourcing. Clearly, this was it felt like there was a bit of a blood feud between the TWU and himself. He may well argue he didn't necessarily have as big a role in that as people believe. Obviously, ultimately, the outsourcing was the decision of Alan Joyce, so it feels a little bit unfair to pin it all on him. But clearly, the pressure has worked. And I mean, clearly it comes across that he probably was the favourite. But it feels like you've had two interventions there, but the employment minister's intervention was really crucial, it seems.
Yeah, it looks like it. It's if the major union and the government is saying maybe don't hire this guy, then Virgin possibly decides, well, let's play it safe, or Paul Jones himself says, look, for the good of the company, I will rule myself out of contention. I don't know which of those scenarios happened, but that's what's come about. So the Game of Planes continues.
It's the Plane of Thrones.
That doesn't make sense.
It makes
Game
no
of
sense.
Planes
Doesn't rhyme with anything. Do you see? Whereas
planes sounds like thrones. Okay, they both end in n's.
But it's game, plane. They rhyme, Plane of Thrones. It's brilliant.
No, it's the Game of Planes because the game is who controls the planes, Adam.
Yeah, but it's not as witty.
It's not a plane of thrones. It's a plane that carries a bunch of thrones around like a cargo airline for kings.
I don't know.
That'd be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Anyway, more importantly than that news story, I have completed assembling.
Are you sure, Adam? Because it is a super constellation and it won't go very far without propellers.
Oh, God, yes, you're right. Yeah, sorry. Okay, welcome back. So Jake pointed out there very correctly that I had assembled the super constellation without propellers, which makes me look like an absolute idiot.
Adam, you didn't need help with that.
I'm going to keep quiet for a bit and try to finish this off. What are we going to talk about next, Jake?
Well, this is a story that came not from Qantas directly, but from Finnair. Now, Finnair is the Finnish carrier, as the name would imply, that has been wet leasing two A330s to Qantas so that Qantas could use them for flights to Singapore and to Bangkok.
That means, for
Sydney.
those that aren't aware, that wet leasing means you give them the plane and you give them the staff as well.
That is correct. So they have been basically hiring the planes and the crew, lock, stock and barrel from Finnair to operate these flights from Sydney to Bangkok. Now, this benefits Qantas because it means that, Qantas's other planes are sort of freed up to run alternative routes, and its crews are freed up to run alternative routes. It's also a benefit for Finnair because with Russian airspace closed, those A330s would otherwise have been sitting around doing nothing because they don't otherwise have the range to handle Finnair's Asian network. So flying for Qantas from Sydney to Singapore and Bangkok helps Finnair to keep those planes moving, keeps them earning money, keeps those crews flying, and so on. Now, the trouble that has eventuated is that the Finnish Transport Pilots Association, the union, has been involved in industrial action that is affecting or could potentially affect these routes. There's a standby ban and amid other industrial action. It covers the flights that Finnair operates for Qantas, as well as the flights used by pilots to transfer to those flights. So there's now negotiations that are going to be beginning on the 12th of February, which would be as this is being recorded tomorrow, but as you are probably listening to this today. There's negotiations beginning to discuss a reduction or furlough of up to 90 pilots, as well as the introduction of standby into these pilots, into pilots' employment contracts. Standby duties, like mandatory standby, is one of the areas that the union has been wanting to negotiate on because they've been insisting that that standby should be voluntary. So Qantas, for its part, has said that there's no impact on its flights from the industrial action as of yet, and it's also in regular discussion with Finnair. It says it's got mitigation plans in place if it is advised of disruptions. These planes are also going to be, from October, moving to a dry lease, which is they are leasing the aircraft only, and the aircraft will be operated by Qantas crews.
Okay, well, before we move on to the next news story, I've completed the super concept. I think I've actually completed it now, haven't I?
Yeah, it looks like it.
It looks quite good, I think. Now
it does.
I'm going to move it onto the. I have to just fill the dead air while I move it.
I mean, you know what they say about the problem with a wooden plane, Adam?
No.
Wouldn't fly.
Oh God.
Why don't you put it over there under the TV?
I don't know. No. It's got to go here, isn't it? Like it's got to be the. Look, it looks good, doesn't it? Let me have a look. Yeah, that's what you want.
Just blocking the camera there.
Yeah, oh well.
We're a very professional operation.
Yeah, so what we're going to do, we're going to rearrange. If you listen to this on Spotify, none of this means anything. We've rearranged our fleet of aircraft now. This actually looks really good. What should go? Should we have the Airbus A380? Never helicopter to the side. Yeah, this is good. This looks really good. Yeah. Absolutely.
I don't know if that's being picked up on the microphone, but Adam's saying that it looks really good, really excellent, and so on. We do need to discuss where that plushy Qantas plane is going, the one that's not quite a 747.
I don't want to relegate it, but I think
because it was a lovely gift from my beautiful wife.
It was. Where do you think it should go? I don't want to because otherwise, do you want to have it on the table or do we want to put it on one? Because it's quite big, so you'll see it.
Well, while we decide where that's going to go, we should probably move on to another story. This is a bit of an interesting one. Newcastle Airport has, in recent months, twice now, been the subject of reporting from the Newcastle Herald, the newspaper, saying that it's in financial trouble, saying that it's in dire financial straits, that it's, hemorrhaging money. This latest story from the Newcastle Herald has said that it's been forced to go cap in hand to Defence because Defence owns the RAF base.
Yeah.
Williamtown asking to have its rent excused, and the Herald has been saying that the government's been knocking back. You can't just keep asking for more. You can't just expect to be bailed out. It makes no sense that after being given more than $120 million, you'd stick your hand out again so soon and think it's going to be well received. I don't know whose idea it was, but it wasn't a good one. That's this unnamed insider cited by the Herald. Newcastle Airport has again, because it did this in October, it put out a statement saying that this reporting is both unfair and inaccurate. spokesperson said they're deeply disappointed in what they call alarmist and inaccurate reporting. They say it contains information from old documents and sources that are not named and not verified. Spokesperson says, we offered Newcastle Herald a briefing last year to answer any questions they had. The Herald has not taken up this offer to date. This is another occasion where the Herald has published claims that have not been put to Newcastle Airport prior to publication. Says, we are deeply concerned about the many inaccuracies in the article. For example, the false claim that passenger numbers are falling when in fact these are in growth. It appears to be part of a repeated approach of the Herald to deliberately attempt to damage the reputation of a publicly owned regional asset. We completely refute the claims around financial viability. Newcastle Airport is looking forward to delivering new regional capability for the Hunter in 2025, with a new international terminal opening as planned later in the year. So basically, Newcastle Airport is coming out and saying this story is a total pack of lies, or not necessarily a pack of lies, but a total pack of nonsense.
And has the Herald responded to this, or have they said anything?
I'm not sure if the Herald itself has responded. They may have, I think, published parts of the response from the airport. But it's getting to be sort of an interesting feud between the Herald and Newcastle Airport. It's he says, she says kind of situation. The Herald saying Newcastle Airport is drowning in debt. Newcastle Airport saying, no, we're not, we're fine. And for those of us sort of sitting on the outside, it's hard to tell what's actually going on.
I don't know. Right. Okay, welcome back. We just spoke there before about the troubles, or apparently not troubles, at Newcastle Airport. What's up next, Jake?
Well, speaking of companies that may or may not be in trouble, I believe you reported on more of a space story, Adam, but Boeing.
Boeing. Which particular? I wrote a lot of stories about
Artemis
Boeing.
Specifically.
Yes, basically. So Boeing have had this kind of year from last year, which started off with the door plug blowing off the 737 MAX in midair. They then had an issue with their Starliner spacecraft, which are basically this is where the astronauts got stranded on the ISS. And the final decision by NASA was that it would be SpaceX that would bring them home and not Boeing. They effectively fired their head of defense and space. I think it was in like September, October last year. They announced for the last calendar year, I think the second worst financial results in their history. And the only worst one was during COVID, which is completely expected. They currently still have a production cap of 737 MAXs, which I think is like 38 or something, which is far below what they actually need to produce. So it's all going from bad to worse for Boeing. It looks like now they're going to have a massively reduced role in the Artemis program, which is the program that's meant to return humans to the moon and then subsequently go on to Mars. And effectively what's happened is your favourite person, Elon Musk, has turned round and said, hey, my rocket's pretty much ready to go. Let's get rid of Boeing, who are currently making the rocket, and we'll do it. We don't know for sure, but what Boeing have come out and said is that they have basically said to 400 people working on the program, we're giving you notice that we may have to make you redundant in 60 days. Obviously, they've not said it's definitely going to happen, but you would imagine that they wouldn't do something as dramatic as that unless they had some kind of heads up that an announcement is coming. Obviously, we've had a new president come in, and he effectively now has overall control of NASA and will have overall control of these contracts. Obviously, that's bad for them and Boeing and their space division. It, again, has more knock-on ramifications for aviation because the worse Boeing is doing, the worse it is for every aspect of the organisation. So it is yet another bad news story for Boeing. It feels like the Boeing story, particularly in the US, is kind of running out of control now. It's bad news story after bad news story after bad news story, and it's hard to know when it's going to end. And speaking of out of control, we've had some comments and people observing that this is possibly a gift from Trump to Elon Musk, because we all know that the new president has rather a transactional view of the world, which some might call blatantly corrupt. Yeah. Some. Yeah, might call it that. So there's been speculation that maybe this is Trump scratching Elon's back, which is an image I didn't want to give myself. No. And what I would say with this is that the argument is basically that currently the plan is that it's called the Space Launch System rocket, which is basically made by Boeing and Northrop Grumman, will basically blast the astronauts off, and then they will transfer to a lunar lander, which is created by SpaceX. They will land on the moon, and then once they finish doing what they do on the moon, digging holes, playing golf, whatever you do, they will then
looking for the cheese.
Yeah, looking for the cheese. They will then effectively go up a little bit, ascend in the lunar lander, and will go back to the Boeing spacecraft effectively, and then will go on their way home. And so people have said, probably quite rightly, why on earth have you got effectively two launch systems doing this when you could just have one? And SpaceX's argument is that their Starship rocket, the one they want to go to Mars, they've already done 7 test flights. They want to do 25 a year. The thing is basically complete, and it's a lot further ahead than the Boeing vehicle. So the argument is, why would you use Boeing when you've got SpaceX ready to go? Now, I think there would definitely be an element of Elon is Donald's mate. He wants to do him a favour. But the other argument is, effectively, back when they were dishing out these contracts, it was kind of an old boys club, and it's an old boys club of Boeing, Northrop Grumman, etc. They kind of get all the deals, but the problem with these companies when it talks about space, they're quite old-fashioned. Like SpaceX kind of revolutionised how you did launch, particularly making all the rockets reusable. So the argument is that Elon's turning around and going, hey, I'm ready to go. I'll do it a lot cheaper. Why are you messing about with Boeing? But nonetheless, the reality is it is a bit dodgy in that Elon's in the cabinet or whatever. Elon is the head of the Department of Government Affairs, the DOGE or Dodge or whatever.
Don't start.
Yeah. Anyway, the point is that effectively now Elon and Trump are, joined at the hip.
I mean, Boeing might, of course, argue that in terms of space contracts, that sure, we've had a few problems with our Starliner, but at least the Starliner hasn't exploded dramatically over the Caribbean.
Yeah, but that was a test flight. To be fair. Though I would say to Boeing, if you do want to get revenge, I think they've still got a few more Air Force Ones that they're making, a few more 747s. So maybe put a dodgy door plug on that. That'll be a way to sort that one out. Right, we got anything else to talk about?
Well, a bit of an update actually on Virgin and Qatar, because we did mention we did talk about Paul Jones earlier on in the piece. I mentioned last week that the IASC, the International Air Services Commission, had written to the Transport Department asking for advice on whether Virgin would be able to do these flights, these wet leased flights to Doha on the Qatar Airways 777-300 ERs.
So they are, just for people that don't know, the IASC. They are basically kind of like the department that in the kind of common and garden arguments about who can fly where and why, they kind of make the decision. Maybe like they dish out the allocation effectively.
Yeah, they determine who gets the capacity to fly where. There's certain amounts of capacity that you have on international routes, and the IASC determines who gets it. Now, Qatar Airways has been using its full capacity of 28 flights from Qatar to Australia's 4 major gateways: Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Perth. Virgin has come along and said, we want to use Australia's half of the bargain, the 28 flights that Australia gets into Qatar. We want that. Nobody else is using it. There's no reason not to give it to us. We're capable of doing this. And so the IASC wrote to the Department of Transport, a bloke with a very excellent name, Jim Wolfe.
Great name.
Asking, in the department's opinion, would this be allowed? And the department is basically back, Mr. Wolfe, who is...
There's going to be a terrible joke coming in.
Who is in no way related to the one from Pulp Fiction that I know of. He basically came back and he said, that's fine. Under the current arrangements, with the bilateral service agreements with Qatar, that would be perfectly permissible. So that's what's come out of that.
The problem with this, though, is that so effectively the person that ultimately signs it off is the federal government, is the treasurer, right?
No, so the treasurer of the Foreign Investment Review Board signs off whether Qatar can buy 25% of Virgin Australia. Yeah. That is a separate thing to whether Virgin can operate these flights to Doha. That falls under the umbrella of the IASC. The IASC decides, do you get this capacity?
But they're intertwined, aren't they? Because presumably Qatar wouldn't do the deal if they weren't able, because the deal's not actually happened yet. They would not do the deal unless they can launch these flights as well. Am I right?
Quite possibly.
Effectively, yeah.
Quite possibly. But the Treasurer doesn't decide directly whether Virgin can do these flights. That's the IASC. In addition, after the IASC makes the call, Virgin then needs to apply to the department for timetable approval to operate the services.
That sounds like something out of the Marvel things. That sounds like Doge, doesn't it? The Department of Timetable Approval.
That would be
Dota,
which I believe is also a MOBA game.
Right. Okay. But anyway, the point is that you've had the ACCC have effectively said their preliminary finding is that they are allowed to launch these flights. You've now had the IASC say that in their view, this wouldn't break the rules.
No, the Department of Transport has told the IASC, no, it wouldn't break the rules.
I see.
And so the IASC, it's now the IASC's responsibility to decide, does Virgin get this capacity? If Virgin gets the capacity, they then have to write to the department for timetable approval.
Right. But the biggest thing is that it's yet another sign that this is likely to go through. It piles the pressure on the federal government a little bit more to put it through, because Virgin's argument will be, as it has been in the past, everybody's up for this. And it would seem that everybody in the industry, bar Qantas, wants this to happen. So it piles more and more pressure on the government. This is also apparently tied into the successor for Jayne Hrdlicka. The argument is, or the rumour is, that they won't get a new CEO until this is all approved. But again, that could all potentially be tied up in a federal election and when a federal election is going to happen. So this could drag on for a little bit, but it's kind of like the signs are this is going to go Virgin's way.
It does look like it, Adam, and the government would face some very serious questions if it did not approve this deal after all of this.
Okay, right. Have we got any more stories to talk about, or are we nearly there?
I just wanted to highlight what I thought was a very excellent headline that I wrote, Adam.
Oh my word, this is extraordinary! I want to give myself an award. What is it? Tee it up first. Tee up the story before you give the headline.
This is a story about an aircraft restoration.
Yeah.
In Brisbane at RAF Base Amberley, you've got the number 23 City of Brisbane Squadron, which has not flown for 65 years. They do airbase operations, so airfield services, firefighters, physical training instructors, cooks, mechanics, air movements. So they're responsible for a lot of stuff that happens on the ground. But they used to fly right up until around 1960 or so. Now, this aircraft is a 1950s era fighter jet that has been restored by the History and Heritage Air Force Restoration Support Section, or HAFRS. A79440. It is a Vampire fighter jet.
You're exaggerating saying that. It's a Vampire.
It is a Vampire fighter jet, so it sucks the petrol out of other fighter jets.
This is rubbish.
But the plane had been mounted as a gate guardian at Amberley. It was taken down and sold. The RAF got the airframe back in 2020, and they have restored it to be put on display at the RAF Amberley's Aviation Heritage Centre. And so naturally, the headline that I went with was 70-year-old vampire sees the sun again.
I don't get it.
Well, it's because vampires nocturnal.
Right. No, I see. And what is the 70-year-old bit linked to it?
Well, it's from the 50s.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's also like I suppose in vampire terms it would be very young.
No, I mean, it's all right. I see what you've done with the headline. I do get it, but I just don't think it's that good. I mean, I don't think it's worth us having essentially a new segment of a show where you give yourself a great review.
It's news, Adam.
Well, I mean, look, well done. Congratulations. Keep it up. Right, we're probably going to finish the show now and end this nonsense. Jake, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Adam.
And thank you very much for listening, watching, whatever. We will be back on this show the same time next week. But for now, from us, goodbye.
Goodbye.